Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of the RepPath podcast. Today we're going to be talking about the territory strategy, not only for new, but also experienced sales reps. So if anybody is getting into a new position, I think you all would find some value in this talk. But before we get into that, guys, as always, some quick housekeeping. You know, if you guys want to see a copy of this podcast or any of the material that we produce, please go to the RepPath Academy at my YouTube channel and subscribe to the RepPath Academy. You could see it there at the bottom link. You could see not only this podcast, but everything else that we produce and all our content. So subscribe. It's 100% free, and you'll be able to get, all this information and more. Secondly, guys, if you have any questions from this moment on, as always, please submit them into the chat, and we'll address them about halfway through the show. And lastly, guys, if you're struggling, things aren't going to change. Stop procrastinating. Stop thinking that I'm going to just keep doing this and eventually people are going to reach out. If you really want to be in this industry, you really want to break in, scale of 1 to 10, you're a 10. Reach out to us and sign up for the RepPath Academy. Go on RepPath.com. You can see the website and the link up there on the screen. You can learn more about the Academy. We have some of the commonly asked questions. And if you go further down, you could see many of the companies that we've worked with and placed throughout the country. And then most importantly, those testimonials of candidates that have graduated from the Academy recently. I mean, these are individuals just like you guys. You'll see these are not paid actors. These are very raw videos, but these are individuals that were in your same shoes. They were struggling. They kept getting ghosted. They applied, they came to the Academy, and they applied the strategies that we teach, and it's going to work, guys. It worked for them. It will work for you. So reach out today. Either go on reppath.com or shoot me a DM, and we can discuss further. So without further ado, guys, let's talk about territory strategy. So this is the most important thing, not only once you get a job, but even during the interview process. You guys have to realize how important it is to discuss your strategy with hiring managers. It's so important. And some of you that haven't broke into the industry, you're going to go, well, Joe, I don't know what to do yet. I haven't been in the industry. I haven't been in this position. It's a wrong answer, guys. Because even if you haven't been in this role, number one, you should be showing some of your transferable skills from a previous position. If you did have a sales role, what did you do? What was your strategy in that role that enabled you to be successful? Because many of you put daily activities on your resume. What do you do every day? Collaborate with marketing, hold sales presentations with key opinion leaders, like all these things are daily activities. But at the end of the day, your results are on your resume. And when you get in the interview, that's when they want to hear about your strategy. How did you achieve all your success? And this isn't even for entry level. Guys, there's so many of you that are experienced. You're great reps. You guys have the success. But when it comes down to describing what's your approach, what's your strategy, a lot of you struggle with that. And I understand that. I mean, believe me, there's some days I didn't have a strategy every single day I worked in the field. If I said that, that's bullshit. It's just not true. But if you get in those habits and do that every day without a game plan, without a strategy, you're going to fail. You're going to struggle. And if you want to piss off your hiring manager when you start out without a game plan. Start out without a strategy. Okay, it's so important because most sales reps, they don't fail because they can't sell. There's a lot of good salesmen out there. They fail because they don't have a strategy. They're bad at where and how they spend their time. You're going to have plenty of time throughout the day, guys. Depending on your roles, especially more in pharma or diagnostics than in med device. Med device, there are times that you're stuck in operating rooms longer than you want to be, even though you are getting great FaceTime with your physicians in those opportunities. But a lot of reps don't take advantage of the time they have. There's plenty of time, guys. And if you spend it in the right place, spend it in, if you're where you're supposed to be and you're spending it correctly, on the right approach, you're going to be successful. So look at your territory, not as a map, but as an investment portfolio. And how can you maximize that? So one of the first things, we're going to talk about 4 different segments to the correct territory strategy. And I hope you guys get some tips out of this. Anything, again, guys, drop those questions in. If you disagree, drop it in. Love to have a debate too, but hopefully you get something out of one of these segments that we're going to talk about today. First one is prioritizing your accounts. Okay, this is combining the revenue potential and the accessibility at each one of these accounts. So not all accounts are equal, guys. For a lot of you that aren't in the industry yet, I know it's going to shock you, but not all accounts are equal. That's one of the toughest parts. If it was that easy where every doctor is worth a certain number of points and you just got is whoever can get you those points, they're all the same. It doesn't matter. Just score 100 points and you'll get your bonus or you'll hit a big commission check. This job would be easy. But they're all weighted differently. A lot of doctors, they have a lot more potential than some doctors. Some doctors don't have much potential. Some have low volume. Some have a lot of potential, but have low volume. Some hospitals, same with hospitals, same with surgery centers. No matter what you're calling on, they're not all equal. So the way I broke this down, so since they're not equal, not all the accounts are worth your time. That's one of the biggest things that I struggle with. I felt like if it's a doctor, I got to call on them. I got to call on these individuals. They're doctors. They're in my call point. They're, one of the specialists I call on. I have to call on every doctor. And I screwed up big time at the beginning because I was spending too much time in these accounts that just weren't generating enough business. So let's talk about some of these. So there's 4 quadrants that you're going to break this down in. You got your high revenue and high access. So we're going to measure revenue and access potential. So first are your high revenue, high access. Guys, these are your gold mines. Okay? You're not going to get a ton of these. Just going to be straight up with you. I wish every account was a high access and high revenue account. They just don't exist that much. So when you do have one of those doctors that has a shitload of say, for instance, you're in pharma and is a very, very high prescriber, and you have time with that physician that you can easily access that physician, guys, that is a gold mine. That is your number one priority. You want to be in there spending as much time as possible, driving revenue in that account, okay? Because you're not going to get too many of those, all right? The next one is high revenue, low access. And these are your long-term plays. So a lot of times you'll see this in the hospital space where there's some accounts that are just a pain in the ass. There's a lot of red tape. They already have, 3 vendors if it's a med device product, and they don't have any place for you there. But they do a ton of cases every day that if you even got a fraction of that, you're going to be in President's Club. So these are long-term plays. The last thing you want to do is ignore these accounts. Same with these same physicians. They have a ton of potential, but you can never see the doctor. Now, a lot of times people go, screw it, I'm not even going to waste my time with that physician. Guys, that's the wrong answer too. You still want to make this a long-term play. Because if you get that account, trust me, that is a game changer. And this happens. You're not the only one that's going after this account. And also, that doctor only hasn't used one product their whole career. Changes happen. There's things that come out that could really impress the doctor. Sometimes, you make, your job as a great sales rep is to show value where they want to switch. But don't give up on those accounts because they are very, very valuable. Next is low revenue but high access. And I call these our confidence builders. These are the ones that I loved when I started. I love going in those accounts that they wanted to see me every day. They high-five you. The doctor comes out, he knows your name. Joe, this is great. Good to see you. I love your product. It's the best. I just prescribed it to a patient last week. Or, Joe, I love your device. We got a case book for next month. And I spent way too much time in these accounts because they feel good. But when you look around in the office, especially if it's an office-based account, and you see one patient, maybe 2, there's very few patients in there. There's a reason why they're low access. Why they're high access and low revenue, guys. They just don't have enough volume yet. Now, I'm not saying you don't waste time in these accounts, because you definitely do spend time here, but you don't spend too much time. You don't want to spend 80% of your time in all these high access, low revenue accounts, because you're never going to get the volume that you need. And believe me, it's harder than you think. When you get in these accounts, you're going to feel good. You feel like you're accomplishing. They're saying yes to everything. And a lot of times they're saying yes to everything because not too many reps are calling on them. It's just a fact. They're not wasting time there because they know that their time is better spent at some of these higher revenue accounts, even if they're tougher to break in. So don't get stuck living in these accounts, guys. Trust me. This happens a lot on ride-alongs. Reps, they get nervous when they're with their manager. They don't want to take them to that tough account. They're like, shit, I mean, I've been calling this, in this territory for 6 months, a year. If I don't have great access with people high-fiving me and smiling when I come in, then I'm not doing my job. No, guys, make it a real day. Take them to the tough accounts. Let your managers work. Let them give suggestions on how to overcome this. What would they do? Let them lead the call. And if a lot of managers don't want to do that, guys, call. I know you can't call them out, but I'll call them out. Be a manager, lead. Stop hiding behind your reps. And I'm not saying all managers do this, because there's a lot of amazing managers, but there are a lot that don't want to do that because honestly, they don't have a suggestion. They don't know what the hell to do. But put your managers to work, guys. Say, I always struggle with this account. I've been calling on it for months. I would love your input. How would you go about that? Would you feel comfortable leading this call? And a good manager is going to say, screw it. Yeah, let's do it. Because they want to show by example. But these are the accounts, guys, that you really want to, get the opinion and the leadership and guidance of your manager. And lastly are the low revenue, low access. Okay, these are complete time traps, guys. You want to minimize these as much as possible. These are the ones that, yes, you do cross off the list. Okay, so we have it broken down in the 4 quadrants, but you're spending your time in those other 3 quadrants that we discussed. Do not get stuck in low revenue, low access accounts. It would be a waste of your time. And if your companies have call frequencies where they want you to go to certain accounts a couple of times a month, have that conversation with your manager. Because the reality is, some of you are probably just going to make up the call anyway. Let's be real. This is where we don't bullshit on this channel, guys. We're real. You can either just make it up, which a lot of reps are going to do, or have to get the opinion of your manager and say, listen, let's talk. Okay, here's why it says to call on this account at least once a month. Here's why I think it's a waste of time. I don't care if it's 20 minutes out of your day. That's 20 minutes you could spend it somewhere else. And they should understand that. If they tell you no and give you pushback, then give them what they want and just, stop in, drop off whatever stupid pamphlet and go on with your day. But don't waste time in these accounts, guys. But I think if you have a straight up conversation with your manager, they should be understanding and say, you know what, maybe we will cross them off the list, focus your time in other accounts. Because again, your time is the most invaluable asset that you have, guys, and you got to take advantage of it. So the biggest mistake that most new reps make, they chase easy wins instead of valuable wins. So there's a difference. Like I talked about, all those access accounts, they feel good when you're in there. But at the end of the day, you got to look at it and go, did I really move the needle forward? The fact that this doctor says he loves my drug, but he's only prescribed it 3 times in the past 6 months. What the hell are you doing in here, guys? That's a waste of time. You don't want this. You're going to see this in device a lot too. Because when you get those friends, especially when you're launching a new product or you're new to the territory, you'll go to anyone that will talk to you. And that's okay for a short time period. But then you got to start developing your territory mapping and start figuring out how you're going to spend your time. Don't just go for the easy wins. Go for the value. It's going to take you a little longer. Yeah, you're going to have your manager up your butt and, where the hell are the numbers? But you got to be confident in where you're spending your time. Because if you spend it wisely, the results will come. So there's 3 questions I want you to ask when you're at the account. And I'm not saying you're asking this to the hiring, to the doctor or the team. Got to ask yourself this whenever you're evaluating any account. Number 1, how much can this account realistically generate? You need to know that, guys. You need to have, when you're in there, You got to be talking to these doctors and asking them about the volume. How often do you see XYZ patients? You know, how many times do you prescribe drugs in this specific class? How many procedures do you do in this, therapeutic area? Because I learned this in spinal cord stim the hard way, where again, calling on doctors that are easy access, but they're only doing one spinal cord stim procedure every 6 months. It's a waste of my time. Meanwhile, there's other doctors that are doing 5 or 10 a month, and I'm ignoring because they're using another competitor that, oh, they're never going to switch. No, I still have to give them time, because if I switch a couple of those, then I'm a monster. Then I'm a President's Club winner. So make sure you're getting the real value of how much can this account realistically generate. Number two, how hard is it to get in front of the decision makers? This is how you understand your access, guys. If they're saying they're a no-see doctor, they don't do lunches, they don't do breakfast, there's no access, obviously that's a low access account, because there's always a way to get in front of these doctors. Might not be easy, but trust me, somebody sees that doctor. There's never been a no-see doctor that never worked at a rep in their life. That's a lie. Never happens. They have to see someone, guys. So trust me, you need to evaluate that and really figure out what the access is. And lastly, is there a clinical or operational gap I can solve? So first and foremost, guys, find out if they do this procedure. Find out if they treat this patient. A lot of times you get numbers that aren't accurate. It's the reality of it. Sometimes it doesn't happen all the time, but pros and cons. Sometimes they do more than that it's showing up in the data, and sometimes they do less. But have those conversations with the doctors, because if they don't have an issue that you can solve, why are you there? Don't be one of those reps that thinks you can solve the world's problems. It doesn't work that way, guys. So make sure you're evaluating if you're going to bring value and there's a need in that account. So at the end of the day, accessibility pays your bills. This is going to pay your bills this month, but the revenue potential builds your career. That's the takeaway, guys. So don't give up on those long-term accounts. So here's a real world example, that I dealt with. You want to call on a lot of the surgery centers. I think I talked about this on a previous call, but I was selling desflurane for Baxter, and I had one of the previous anesthesiologists that I had a great relationship with moved and started his own surgery center with a couple other doctors. They loved me. We had a great relationship. They loved desflurane. And I wind up going to their surgery center, and I spent a lot of time in there. I was doing cases with them. I was observing procedures, helping out. All they did was use desflurane. And then I had accounts like Hackensack Medical Center or Morristown Memorial or St. Barnabas. These are all Jersey, big institutions that were tough for access. But I like that comfort of going in, and they love me in the surgery center. But at the end of the day, guys, they were doing maybe 5 to 10 cases a month of desflurane, and Hackensack was doing 400 cases. Barnabas was doing 350, Morristown 300. So that puts in perspective, they were 30 to 40 times more valuable. And if I spent more time, and I learned quickly to not spend so much time in these surgery centers, because they're just not worth your time. And even though it's more of a struggle to get that business, trust me, once you get a couple of doctors on board, you're going to see your numbers skyrocket. Those are what gets you on President's Club, not the ones that waste their time with their friends, plain and simple. So that's a real world example, guys. So realize that it could be that much more potential calling on some of those big hospitals or bigger accounts. Next segment 2, we'll talk about building call plans that actually convert. So at the end of the day, guys, those random visits, they're going to equal random results. You want intentional call plans, because that is what builds your pipeline. So what is a good call plan? Here's some of the questions that they'll answer. So when you're going in there, you want to ask yourself this: who am I seeing? Obviously. Why now? And what's the next step? Okay, so what's the reason you're seeing this doctor? Number one, who are you going in there to see? There's 5 doctors on the wall. Do you have a person that you're trying to see? Or are you just going in the back and whoever comes out, you're going to just get time with them? It's the wrong approach, guys. You need to have an objective. Who are you seeing? Why are you seeing them? Why do you need to see them now? What is your next step? Got to answer those 3 questions. You should know that on every call, especially when you're with your hiring managers. You want to get in this rhythm anyway, guys. A, because it works. B, because especially when you're on those ride-alongs and you're wondering, how come my manager is giving me poor rankings, poor ratings? It's because a lot of times you don't have a plan. So make sure you have an intention of where you're going. You want to shift from I'm just stopping by to I'm advancing a specific opportunity. There's a big difference there, guys. So here's a pre-call objective. Here's an example. You want to get Dr. Smith to trial the product on at least 2 patients, whether it's a pharmaceutical product or to get 2 more cases out of them with whatever product you're trying to sell. The message, you want to focus on 1 core value prop. Don't focus on 5 things. You're going to hit them all at once, guys. Focus on 1. Now, obviously, you've already done your research, found that clinical driver that physician's looking for, whatever the need is or driver, you know what that is. Go in there with a value prop that actually helps move the sale forward. Have a planned question, something planned, something, again, that's going to move the conversation forward. And lastly, what is the defined next step? Are you looking to get a trial? Are you looking to get another meeting? Maybe a demo, or maybe, an invitation to a committee meeting, or a committee introduction. Whatever it is, what is your next step? You should be able to describe that before the call. I'm meeting with Dr. Smith. The reason why I'm meeting him is for this. The goal is to get XYZ out of this. And here's the question I'm looking to get answered. That would be a great pre-call plan, guys. Doesn't always go the way you want it. That's okay. But have the plan. You need some sort of direction you want this to go in. A lot of times you have to pivot. You don't want to be so narrow-minded that when they pivot, you go, nope, I had this only call plan. We're only going in that direction. No, that's wrong too, guys. That's idiotic. You want to make sure that you're going in the direction of a certain plan that you constructed. So everything should move the account along the sales continuum, whether it's going from awareness, next to interest, to evaluation, to trial, to adoption, and then expansion. That's the typical process of how you move the ball forward and really generate revenue. So the last thing I'll leave you guys with for this step is, if there's no next step, it wasn't a sales call. It was just a social visit. Guys, do not get caught up in these social visits all day. They piss off offices. They might like you for a while, that you're popping in, you're checking in on them and saying hello. If you do this all the time, guys, you are going to lose business. You're not going to get to the next level. You got to get past that uncomfortable part where now they're your friends and you don't want to talk business with your friends. That's nonsense. Bullshit. You might be friendly with them, and you might have friends that are doctors, guys, but at the end of the day, you have a job to do, and you got to keep moving that ball forward if you want to be successful. Got to ask uncomfortable questions. You got to ask for the business, plain and simple. And the last thing, busy reps make calls, effective reps move deals. Okay, remember that. So the next segment we're going to talk about is avoiding the drive-by rep trap. Okay, so the whole idea here, guys, is being visible doesn't mean that you're being valuable. That's the key. So a lot of you, like I talked about, a couple minutes ago, is you don't want to get in that trap of just stopping by. If they see me, they're going to use me. They know I'm the Avinza rep, I'm the Pfizer rep, I'm the AstraZeneca rep. They know my products, whatever it is. They know what I sell. Guys, no, that's a bad approach. That's a lazy approach. It's not going to work long term. So don't just come in there and be that drive-by rep. And what does that mean? That's someone that just pops in with no plan. They're there to just drop off samples. They come in and they go, oh, I'm just checking in. How many times did I say that? What are you doing here, Joe? "No, I'm just checking in." It's weak, guys. That's weak. Always have something that you want to share with them. It's always got to be something new and exciting. Guys, it might be boring as shit to you, but you got to make it exciting. That's what a good rep does. You got to go over. You don't have to go over a whole study and break down everything every time you see a doctor. Like, hey, Dr. Jones, real quick, I just want to show you this. Here's a great table that illustrates the benefits of using our product, blah, blah, blah. Or here's a great study. Just want to show, bottom line, the results were blah, 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 and give him whatever the results were. Just quick little one-liner, but always be fresh, always sharing new stuff. Trust me, it seems like you're being annoying. You're not. You're there to sell and continue to bring value. You have to continuously do this, guys. And at the end of the day, the last thing is you leave with nothing advancing. Got to ask yourself, after these calls, after these pop-ins, did you really move the needle? And guys, be honest out there. How many of those calls did you have today that you're like, shit, I really wasted a lot of time today. I didn't really move the needle. I was the king of that. I did that a lot, but you got to continue to work on that and always strive to move the needle forward. If not, don't even waste your time popping in. Just don't. So if it takes you another 10, 15 minutes to sit in your car to come up with something to think about, to talk about, spend the time in the car to pre-call plan. Don't just pop in there and wait and just say hello and leave. It's a waste of time. So here's some signs that you're doing it. Again, like I said, you can't explain what changed after your visit. You visit the same accounts without any progression. You find yourself in these same accounts. Again, these are the friendly accounts, guys. That's great that you made friends there, but did you actually move something forward? And then you rely on FaceTime instead of strategy. There's no strategy. If they're going to see me, and after 6 months, if I'm in there every week, they're going to continue to prescribe. They're going to continue to book me for cases. Guys, it's not going to keep working. Your competition is going to be showing value every time. You got to assume they are. So you have to show value every time. You got to push yourself harder. So here's how to fix it. Instead of checking in, replace it with following up on. Or you wanted feedback from Dr. Jones on something. Or the next step we discussed was whatever it is, focus on those three startings. What are you following up on? What did you want feedback on? And what's the next step? If you can't answer those questions, then again, you don't have a plan. And so you want to bring one of these three things in every time. Either it's new insight from a clinical study, a financial study, operational, a question that uncovers pain. A good question can uncover a lot, guys. And it's okay to use it once you see doctors opening up to take that and ask that same question on the next call. Because if it's going to open up pain points, again, guys, let's talk about it. Because now pain points are good, because now if you can provide a solution, that's where you get the business, guys. And a lot of us, we don't ask enough questions. We like throwing features and benefits out. Features and benefits are dead. They've been dead a long time. It's providing solutions to their problems. That's how you get on the President's Club. And then lastly, the clear action step that you're looking for. So again, closing lines I'll leave you with. Familiarity doesn't close deals. Progress does. And lastly, if nothing changes after your visit didn't count. It never happened. Okay. So lastly, guys, let's put it all together. What's your daily plan? So and again, guys, you can work this out however you want. But this, for me, what I would like to see with my reps, spending their mornings in those high revenue accounts, whether they're high revenue, high access, high revenue, low access. These are a lot of your long-term plays. You got to get in there, guys. You don't steer away from them because they're low access. You need to be in there. So spend your mornings in those accounts. Midday, you could schedule meetings with decision makers, somewhere where you have that access. And then later in the day, go in those quick wins, those accessible accounts, the ones that make you feel good. So for me, I would break it down. I'd have 70% of my time on those long-term plays. And it sounds crazy. Well, again, they take more work, they take more effort, but they have a tremendous upside. And I'd spend 30 to 40% in those quick wins because they still add up. I'm not saying they don't bring value, but a lot of times people have that flip. They spend 70 to 80% in those quick wins because they feel good, and 20, 30% in those long-term wins. You got to flip it, guys. It's going to be a little painful for a little bit, but trust me, the rewards are going to come in if you're doing everything correctly because you need the volume to get to that next level. So just some takeaways, guys. Your territory doesn't reward effort. It rewards focus. So a lot of people will say, well, I work smart, not hard. Guys, I like that line too. Everyone uses that same bullshit line. Yes, it's true to an extent, but what if you worked smart and hard? What if you did that? Those are the studs. Everyone always makes it seem like it's a competition when you're working hard and working smart. You can do both. The worst thing you want to do, though, is not work smart. Doesn't matter how hard you work then. Because a lot of reps do that. They don't intend to, but they don't have a plan, and they just keep going out, calling on doctors, just getting in front of people. And they don't have a message. They don't have a game plan. They're not trying to solve a problem. They're not uncovering pain points. That's a waste of time. But working smart doesn't also mean that you cut your day off early because you had 5 great calls today and it's 2:00 and you want to get on the golf course. Do whatever you want. But at the end of the day, if you can combine working smart and working hard, those are the real studs that get out there and really make things happen. And then again, like I said, it's not always the busiest reps that are the best reps. The ones that are the most intentional are the most successful. And lastly, if you control your territory strategy, you control your income. It's that simple, guys. I've never met reps that have such a great strategy. Now, let me preface this by saying, obviously, we're talking about products that are accessible, that doctors can actually prescribe them, that hospitals, they're on the GPO and they can use this medical device, whatever that is. But the ones that have a strategy, they are going to be the most successful. Always. They're always going to be the most successful. I never met a rep that had always had such great strategy wherever he or she went, but they just aren't successful. It doesn't work, guys. You have a good strategy, you're going to win in the end. But I'm going to pause here. James, any questions from the crowd?
We got a couple, Joe. We got Lisa Moreno. Joe, how do you prioritize which accounts to hit first when you literally know nothing about the territory and you're starting from scratch with 0 warm contacts?
Yeah, I mean, if your company, so we're assuming that your company didn't provide you any data, you're at a startup, that's a little different, guys. I mean, you got to go out there. Number one, you should get some intel from your company, from your manager, from a previous rep, but just go out there then. If you know nothing, get in front of doctors. Start having conversations, though. Don't go in front of doctors and not ask questions and just present. That's the key. So if you know nothing, they don't have any data, you're going out blind. That's okay, because that happens, especially in a lot of startups. But when you get time with doctors, you need to start figuring out what their potential is. Again, how many patients do you see in this certain therapeutic class? How many cases of blah, blah, blah do you do a month? You need to go by something, guys. If they're only doing 1 case every 6 months, okay, that's a low revenue account. But if they're seeing 20 patients a day in this specific that they can prescribe this drug to, okay, well, now this is someone that is high revenue. And you can come up with your own rating system, guys. So for instance, in pharmaceutical sales, for a lot of you that aren't in that industry, they do deciling. So they'll do the lowest will be a decile 1, and the top doctors, the top prescribers are decile 10. And you're not going to have tons of decile 10s in your territory. There might only be a few, but at least you have some sort of ranking system. And you could create your own, guys. If your company doesn't have all that information, start saying to yourself, okay, everyone that prescribes at least 10 of these, 10 drugs in this therapeutic class a month or sees 10 of these patients a month, they're a decile 10. Anyone that sees 9 a month, they're a 9, or whatever you want to come up with. You could come up with your own system, which is fine. That's actually great to do, because then it can help you prioritize where you're spending your time at. But if you don't have that info, you got to go out there and ask questions with those doctors and start developing a call pattern and a call strategy.
Carlos Vega, what's your take on reps who map out their entire territory geographically versus ones who organize strictly by account potential? Which approach wins in the long term?
Well, I think, number one, definitely the one that prioritized by potential. Absolutely. Now, you could use common sense, guys. This isn't that difficult. You start prioritizing both. But if you're going to sit here and say, I'm going to, because the doctor is 2 minutes away, or there's 10 doctors 2 minutes away, I'm going to make sure I go see all these other doctors, as opposed to spending an extra 20 minutes to go to a high potential office. I mean, that you just got to use common sense, but always be led by potential, and then you can map everything else out. There's always a way to do both. You just don't want to lead with convenience. Don't always lead with convenience. Lead with potential, and then figure out the most optimal time. For instance, if another high potential office is 5 minutes away, as opposed to a third one that's 45 minutes away, you're not going to go to the one 45 minutes away and then go backwards. That doesn't make any sense. So simply start by the potential and then take it from there, where the next account is within reason that you can go see. And then you can factor in the locality of wherever you're going.
I got Samantha Fit 22. How do you know when it's time to cut your losses on an account that keeps ghosting you and move on to the next one in your territory?
Yeah, well, I mean, it depends. Are you doing the same thing every time? That's the first thing I would ask. Are you going in there at the same time every week? Because this is what a lot of reps do. Again, I did it. And I'm like, wow, I've been in here the last 6 weeks in a row. I've been here the last 3-4 months in a row, and they never see me. Well, let's look back. Am I always going the same time, the same day, with the same approach? And that's the first thing you have to change. Have you tried everything? Have you tried calling on other colleagues in that practice? Maybe a nurse, maybe a PA, maybe the office manager. But there are other people that you can show value. So sometimes you don't want to ever waste a visit, guys. You always want to get something across, even if it's leaving something with the receptionist, leaving something of value that they can relay to the physician, or something that helps them out in their day. Just something. So did you call on all these people? Have you worked with other reps? Have you tried contacting them, via LinkedIn or another social media platform or anything else? Have you gone to different events, different programs outside of the office? Have you gone to the hospitals to see them? Because sometimes you don't get any access in an office, but believe it or not, if you go to the lounge in the hospital, you might be able to see the physicians. Sometimes you're able to catch them walking in and out, depending on if you know when they're coming there. Guys, these are the things that aggressive reps do. They wait in parking lots. They get to offices before anyone gets there and wait outside and catch the doctor before they walk in. If you've tried all of this and you're not getting any success, then yes, move on. But I wouldn't be so quick. A lot of people are very quick to move on just because, doctor never sees me. Yeah, but did you really do everything? Did you really have a game plan that you changed up? Did your approach change? Did all these things change and you're still not working? Okay, then fine. But if you still have other options, exhaust all them first and then worry about, potentially moving on from that office.
I got Brandon Goldberg. Lead generation question. How do you provide value to doctors? How do you leave a good first impression?
So how do you provide value to doctors? Well, first off, when you're first starting out, Brandon, you got to get in there and find out what are their key drivers. That's first off. You don't want to, the mistake that a lot of new reps make, They get a new shiny, glossy detail aid. The company tells them, this is a new feature that everyone's going to love about our product. And they go out there and they just jam it down the doctor's throats. They don't ask questions. What I challenge you to do when you first meet doctors, don't mention your product. Whenever you have that first meeting where you're going to get, maybe you'll do a lunch or a breakfast where you're going to get some time with them, ask as many questions as possible. Uncover their needs. Find out about their practice. What is something that's a pain point for them? What do they struggle with? What can be improved upon? What do they like, dislike? Find out all these things. Don't mention your product. If you mention your product, again, you're gonna a lot of managers are gonna get mad at me for this, but it works because it forces you to learn more and make it about them. When you get in there and just start spitting out all the shit about your product, you're making it about you. You might not even know if they use your product. You got to ask these questions. So that's the strategy you lead with. You lead with fact finding as much as you can about your physicians when you first get in the field. Don't focus it on, I was able to yell my product out and show my detail aid, 10 times today. That doesn't do shit. You want to find out about the doctors, about their key drivers, about their needs, and then provide a solution, provide value to what they're looking for. Because you might find some doctors that don't use your product and will never use the products in that class. That's the ones you move on from. I don't care what your company tells you. Like I had a conversation, they don't use these products. And if you dig deep enough, you'll find out if that's real or not. But most doctors are not going to make that up. They might make up volume and say, I do 10 instead of really 3 a month. But at least you need something to base it on. But ask as many questions as possible. Try your best not to talk about your product on the first call. And you're going to get a lot more information that's going to help you in the future.
You should all check out last week's episode about not selling products first. Joe went in depth
100%.
on this exact topic. So go to our YouTube channel and check it out.
Thank you, James. Yes, we're talking about value-based selling versus selling features and benefits. So definitely check out that episode, guys. Thank you, James.
Absolutely. We got Lexi Marie. Is it worth driving 2 hours to see one high-value account, or should you always be clustering your visits to maximize the day?
I mean, that depends. But yes, it can definitely be worth driving long distances to see accounts. We need to do more of a deeper dive into what we're looking at. So everything isn't so black and white, like, nope, never drive 2 hours. And yes, you always drive 2 hours. I mean, it takes a little bit more analysis into that, but driving long distances to see the high value accounts, absolutely. And a lot of times that's just real, guys. It's going to happen. The only thing is you want to start developing a better route planning where you shouldn't be doing that week after week where you're always driving all the way, into the sticks, because you're not planning your territory a little bit better and you're mapping a little better. But definitely go as far and as long as it takes if the potential's there.
I got Big Mike Fitness. Joe, how much of territory success is actually the territory you're given versus effort the rep puts in? Because I've heard people say some territories are just unwinnable. And
that is true. You don't want to, a lot of times people do make excuses. They love to blame when a territory is not doing well and saying it's things outside of their control. But a lot of times it is true that you'll see reps that are, this is why when I get candidates that are 5-time President's Club winners, I don't get that excited right off the bat. Again, it's hard to look at that and not go, okay, this person probably, has a strategy that is proven, and that's, there could be many reasons why they're a great sales rep, but a lot of times, especially, so let's back up. If they're a 5-time President's Club winner, did they win that all at one company, which is still good? But if they won that at 5 different companies or 3 different companies, now that's really impressive. That to me is the first thing I check. If they can show duplicated success at multiple companies, that's the sign, a very good sign, that it's not about the territory, that's the sales rep. If they had one territory where they were a 5-time President's Club winner, okay, that could be good. It also could be, did you take over from a stud that had the territory for 10 years and got everything cranking? Is it the product where a lot of the competition, they just, this product is so superior from everything else? Or a lot of times, some reps and, a lot of the President's Club winners, they don't want to admit this, but this is a reality. Are there doctors that are on the speaker bureau for the company? And these 2 or 3 doctors, they're really cranking out volume that without them, they wouldn't be anywhere near the leaderboard. That happens a lot too. So it could definitely be both. What I would like to hear, it comes back to what we're talking about on this call, is your strategy. So when I'm in interviews with these people, that's great. You're a 10-time, 5-time President's Club winner. Tell me how you did it. If you can't explain your strategy, if you can't talk about your approach, that's a red flag. That means odds are there were other factors that enabled you to win those President's Clubs. But if you have a clear-cut strategy and you talk about how you've used this in multiple situations and multiple roles, then odds are that's the kind of rep that I want on my team. So it could be both. It really depends on how well they could talk about their strategy. But sometimes there's exterior factors. I mean, one time there was another quick story. When I was at Oregon, there was the top rep in the company 2 years straight. And it was based on the bonus plan because it was heavily weighed on volume. And this individual was a good rep. I mean, I respected her. I thought she was great. Very nice person, very knowledgeable, everything. And she had the Cleveland Clinic. The Cleveland Clinic was the biggest hospital in the nation and still is. They changed it to growth, weighing it more on growth. She went from being first to dead last in the company. So it could depend on how it's structured too. If you're focused on volume and you have all these high volume accounts, that's great. But now if they change it to growing those high volume accounts, it could change the whole scenario. And you could go from being the top rep to one of the reps on the bottom.
Amanda Torres. Joe, when a new rep inherits a territory with existing contracts coming up for renewal in the first quarter, should they prioritize protecting that revenue or focus on net new business development to prove themselves?
You have to focus on the contracts. Guys, you have to. Any contract coming up, this is if you have the account or going for the account. Those should be your top priority. Because a lot of these contracts could be multiple years. It could be a year contract, could be a 3-year, a 5-year, who the heck knows what it is. But number one, you need to know what the timeline is for those contracts. But usually they don't come up once a month. Hospitals and businesses aren't renewing contracts every month. That's a pain in the ass. So usually be anywhere, the minimum I've seen are 6 months to at least a year. That is your number one priority. Get in front of those projects first, because that, again, if you miss that, there's no guarantee you're closing those other low-hanging fruit to begin with. But one thing I will guarantee you, if you don't show up to those meetings and you don't try to sell your product, you're going to lose out for the next year or more of business. So absolutely focus on whatever timeline or whatever contracts are coming up. Be in those offices or hospitals first.
Priya Mehta. Joe, for someone who hasn't broken into the industry yet, how important is it to understand territory strategy before you even land your first role? And how would you recommend studying it from the outside?
Yeah, well, that's a great question, Priya. And very simply, because we're one of the only programs that actually teach strategy. At the RepPath Academy, it's not just about optimizing your resume and your LinkedIn profile and giving you interview tips. I mean, that's not what it's all about. Of course, we do all that. But we're one of the few academies that focus on actually making you a better sales rep. Because you're going to work not only with me, my coaches, but also the other academy members. These are individuals sometimes that are already in the industry, and they're just looking for their next role. I mean, we have individuals looking to go from pharma to device to pharma. They've been in the same role a while. They're looking to get to a promoted position, whatever it is to expand and advance in their career, they're looking to do. So a lot of times we're going to talk about what their strategy is, what their approach is, because you need to explain this in the interviews. And it doesn't mean that you're not making up. They know that you don't have experience, but if you can at least verbalize what your plan is, what you've learned, you could say, I took the RepPath Academy. This is what I learned. This is what I'm going to do when I hit the ground. So I hit the ground running. This is my first 30, 60, 90 days. This is going to be my approach. And we're going to teach you specific approaches depending on what role you're going for. Not bullshit, generic 30, 60, 90s. We hate that at the Academy. It's got to be specific with a real game plan. But we can teach you that with us. Reach out to me and we can discuss more. Great question.
I got Tyler Brennan. How do you approach territory planning differently when your product requires physician training and adoption versus a product that's more plug and play with no learning curve?
Well, I mean, again, it's more challenging, but usually more rewarding. And usually when you train someone, because I've had this, those become your most loyal customers. I did this many times, both at Stereotaxis, training people in the cath lab. We did this at Boston Scientific. We did this in anesthesia. When you're training people, you'll see this too in the hospital space, especially at teaching institutions, when you're working with residents. I have so many residents that have become lifelong friends because I worked with them in anesthesia when they were just starting out. And residents are great to work with. They're green. They want to learn. And the more that you could be involved in that process, help guiding them and teaching them either a specific procedure or about a product, that long-term relationship and just overall, the long-term, it'll help you with your long-term goals. What basically I'm trying to say. So it might take you a little longer. That sucks at the beginning because you're like, I just want something to plug and play. But you're less memorable. If it's just a plug and play. They don't need you. But if it's a procedure, you have to teach them, and it's many steps. But then it also brings in X amount of revenue because now they know this new procedure. Trust me, guys. They're going to remember you. They're going to want to continue to work with you. They're going to build trust. You're going to bring real value. So I welcome those that take some extra time, that might take 5-10 cases for them to be up and running on their own. Those are great positions to be in, guys, because it's hard work, but the long-term results are going to be much, much better than any plug and play product. Guaranteed.
I got a question from Elise Fontaine. When a company expands into a new geography and carves out a brand new territory with no install base, what does a realistic 12-month territory build-out plan look like compared to inheriting an established book?
Well, it depends. It depends on the product, depends on the space, if you're in hospital versus the office space, because office space is going to be typically much quicker to get up and running than a hospital product. Nothing is going to be used in the hospital unless it gets approved either by the P&T or the VAC committees, whether it's pharma with P&T or VAC with the device. So a lot of those decisions take time. They take evaluations, they take approvals, they take budget hour, like all those things. The GPO, whoever's involved for device, sometimes if you don't have access, they can't get that product on the GPO. That takes a while. So it really depends, but comparing a new territory versus an established one, a lot of times it's exciting. It's easy to take over that established territory. Like, for instance, I've been in roles where we had 90% market share. And you're like, Joe, that's amazing. Why wouldn't you want that? Well, I'll tell you why. Because many times you're bonused not on how much volume you have. It's going to be on how much you grow it. They're not going to make it easy for you guys. If they're going to do that, they don't need you. So a lot of times those high volume or high market share territories, you have to grow. And that's much harder than taking a brand new territory with no business in there that you have nowhere to go but up. I mean, I just asked this question last week on a LinkedIn post, and the majority of the reps, it was a very similar circumstance. I'd say maybe 90% all picked give me that brand new territory, because even though it's going to take a little bit longer than the one that you're just walking into, the potential to grow is much greater, and that also usually equates to greater bonus dollars. So I would definitely take that open territory. But timelines, it could be 3 months, it could be a year, it could be 2 years. It really depends on the product.
I got Angela Forsyth. How often should you realistically be reevaluating your territory plan in the first year, or is this something you set once and just grind on?
Yeah, you definitely don't set once and grind on. But I would say the easiest, the most realistic is each quarter. Sometimes, guys, the results don't come quickly, so you don't want to change your game plan every week. Even once a month is a little quick, but I think once a quarter, you should be doing your quarterly analysis with your manager anyway, and that's a great time. Guys, that's okay. If you have a strategy that fails, that's normal. Don't think that I have to pick the right strategy or I'm a failure. No, you're going to fail a lot. That's how you strategize. You try shit. Sometimes it doesn't work. You adjust. Don't be set in your ways and say, no, this is the only way I'm going to do it. Then you're going to fail. But be open-minded to trying different approaches and finding out what works, because you're going to see sometimes something doesn't work, you pivot. But typically, I'd say once every quarter, because that's a great time. You should be evaluating your territory and with your hiring manager, doing quarterly reviews anyway. And that typically is the best time to do
that. Diane Whitfield, for someone coming from pharmaceutical sales where territories are very defined, how different is territory strategy mindset when you move into medical device sales?
It depends. I mean, a lot of times you don't have the data that pharma gets. So for a lot of you guys that don't know, if you step into a pharmaceutical sales role, and we're not going to talk about startups and, the outliers here, but majority of the pharmaceutical companies have contracts already in place with all the pharmacies. So they get all the prescription data from, all these pharmacies around the country. And that's where they get the numbers. That's where you see that the doctor prescribed X number of this drug, Y number of this drug, Z number of that drug. And they have everything broken down. So a lot of times you get more information when you get in the field. So at least, you have some sort of direction on where you need to go in terms of volume potential. A lot of times with device, you're not going to get that. You're going to go by what the doctors say, what some of the colleagues say, what some of your previous, if someone was in that role, that's always very valuable, where you're not going to know exactly, but you should get a very good idea. Especially, I was in roles that I knew exactly how many cases a certain doctor would do every month within a couple of cases. Their volume, they were very predictable in their volume. But a lot of times you don't know it until you're in the field and seeing and learning that by being in the field. So it is a little bit more challenging in device because it's more of an unknown, especially when you don't have any info from a previous rep to go on. You got to figure it out on yourself. But like I said earlier, if you're asking a lot of questions, you're doing your due diligence to learn about that doctor and their practice, then you should be able to find out a lot of that information quickly.
Natalie Bishop, I think this is our last one we got here, Joe.
Okay.
Should a new rep be telling their manager exactly how they plan to work the territory, or is this better to just show results and keep your strategy close to the vest?
No, definitely don't keep it close to the vest. You want to share the strategy, guys. Be proud of it. That's number one. And it's okay if, again, you could come up with a strategy, and there's times that a good manager might hear you out and say, okay, well, just, we've tried similar strategies, let's adjust that a little bit or pivot here or there. I mean, that's great. You want to collaborate with your manager, but you don't want to be that rep that's just tell me where to go, tell me what to do, or I have a great strategy, but I'm not going to share it with you. Guys, that's the last thing you want to do. Let them know what you're planning on doing. They love that, and a lot of times you could come up with a strategy, and this is how people get promoted too. When they know what you're doing and it's working and they can duplicate that, these are the reps that become field trainers, their team leads, and then eventually they start to get recognized. Obviously, your numbers got to be there too. But when you start creating initiatives that can help the company wide, that's a lot of times when you see reps that get promoted quickly. So share your ideas. Don't keep them close to the vest and say, I'm not going to share any secrets. Guys, that shit doesn't work. At the end of the day, people still have to implement this. It's not like you just share a secret and it's people just all of a sudden they're killing their number. They got to go out there and do it. That's the most important part. So share your strategies and you're going to see that it's going to help you in the long run.
That's all I got for you today, Joe.
Awesome, man. Well, thank you very much again, James.
Of course.
Great questions. And thank you for reminding me with last week's podcast. That is very helpful. So,
something you need someone to do for you.
Finally earning your pay once in a while. Unbelievable. Instead of just throwing out digs, making fun of me on half the friggin' podcast.
Hey, someone's got to keep you humbled a little bit, Joe.
But thank you, James. Thank you, everyone. Great questions. Again, guys, anything else with the RepPath Academy, reach out to me, shoot me a DM, go on RepPath.com. And last, also before I forget, anyone that's a lobby member, make sure you go and submit the promo code Licata, Licata. You see it there at the bottom of the screen so you can get additional discounts. But that's it for today, guys. Thank you again. As always, we'll be doing these every Monday and Wednesday at 3 p.m. Eastern. So if I don't hear from any of you, I'll see you guys on Wednesday at 3 o'clock. Have a great week, guys. Take care.